I wish I had heeded my lawyer's advice and refrained from watching that DVD. It didn't serve any purpose, only inflicted further damage upon myself, leaving me utterly shattered. Everything had already ended weeks prior. I could have simply kept it locked away, untouched, in the safe. My anger would have persisted, as would my sense of betrayal, but at least my soul would have remained intact. However, I couldn't resist the temptation. It felt like an irresistible urge that I had to satisfy. A year earlier, I began noticing subtle changes in my wife's behavior. She started dressing more elegantly, spending excessive amounts on clothing, which I didn't think was possible, and staying out later with her so-called girlfriends. I couldn't understand how a group of middle-aged women could refer to themselves as girls, but I digress. The most telling sign was her newfound happiness. My wife, who was typically self-centered and unpleasant, had never exhibited happiness as one of her traits. That changed. She grew even more distant from me and our children. While this wasn't entirely unexpected, given that our home had long been a place where she merely slept and our family served as a verbal punching bag, her complete lack of pretense was startling. There were no calls to let us know she'd be late, no effort made to prepare meals for the kids. After discovering an Amazon gift card left on the dining room table for my birthday, and not showing up until 11 that evening, I reached the breaking point. When the kids mentioned our plans to celebrate at Buca di Beppo and asked about her absence, she hurriedly put them to bed, her face flushed with anger. Couldn't it have waited? Was it really necessary to do it today? Now I'm the villain. That's just fantastic. Daddy's going to be a hero again. I sat holding the Shinerbach and looked at her. Are you serious? We didn't leave until 7. We waited an hour and a half for you. Did you even check your messages? Your daughter called you 3 times. You know what? Screw you. Why even come home? Next time, just stay away. I got up uncertainly, slightly tipsy from the wine and beer. I climbed the stairs to bed, stripped down to my underwear, and slid under the covers. She joined me 15 minutes later. I couldn't tell if it was guilt or a birthday gesture, but as she lay next to me, she started touching me. I couldn't remember the last time I'd been so angry with her, and she seemed to favor reconciliation. I know we've drifted apart lately, darling, but we can fix things. You know I love you. We haven't made love in over 5 weeks, and it's been years since we've really made love. I wanted to just turn away and ignore her, but I didn't have the strength to do it. When she kissed me, I reciprocated. When my lips touched her collarbone, I caught the scent. Eros by Versace. Although weak, it has been preserved, probably since a few hours have passed. I usually use fierce perfumes from Abercrombie & Fitch, but the fragrance coming from her seemed familiar to me. It was a gift from the children for my birthday. The conclusions should not have surprised me, but they hurt me a lot. I felt nauseous, hurried to the bathroom, and threw up. After rinsing my mouth, I sat down on the toilet, trying to collect my thoughts. Anthony, are you okay? Her voice came from outside the door. No, I'm not okay, you lying woman. I feel bad. I just need a few minutes. Good. Then I'll sleep in the guest room. I don't want to catch anything. Thank you for your sympathy and understanding, you traitor. Good. What the hell was I going to do? The next morning, I used the computer in the store and came across an unexpected number of private detectives. Who would have thought that Colorado is the center of underground activity? How could I tell which of them was the most experienced? I was confused. Ultimately, I chose the one whose website seemed to me the most perfect. Within 2 weeks, I gathered all the necessary information. She had an affair with our child's pediatrician. I shouldn't have been surprised. Perhaps she wanted to improve her skills. He was a divorced man in his 40s and 50s. Dr. Burroughs had a considerable fortune. He was a selfish person, and I've known about it for at least 10 years. Her brother turned out to be Jerry Hernandez, a famous middleweight boxer. When we got married, he bought a house and we lived on the same block as her other siblings, as well as her mother. Jerry provided me with financial support when I quit my job at the firm to pursue a career as a professional glassblower. He provided all the necessary equipment and retained a 10% stake in my business. As soon as I paid him off, he refused his share. I managed to do reasonably well for myself. Choosing to work as an artist instead of conforming to a mundane corporate job brought me satisfaction. However, my wife wasn't as pleased. The financial risk involved didn't sit well with her until I purchased her a BMW, which somewhat appeased her, although she still wasn't thrilled about telling her friends that I worked as an artist from a backyard studio. Whenever I attempted to repay her brother, she objected, arguing, "He doesn't need the money. He's wealthy." I tried to explain that his financial need wasn't the issue, but I doubted she comprehended or cared. In her eyes, any income we earned belonged to us, and she adamantly opposed it going elsewhere. Interestingly, this principle didn't apply to other people's money. She frequently had Jerry cover expenses for her. It took me 6 years to fully reimburse my brother-in-law using funds I secretly kept from my wife. Despite his repeated attempts to refuse the sporadic payments I made, I persisted because it aligned with my values. When Jerry fell ill and lost his money, he could no longer provide assistance. Since the house was in her name, she promptly put it on the market. Within a few weeks, we relocated to Pueblo. She found our previous small-town life too narrow-minded for her taste. I believe she saw her brother once more before he passed away. I, on the other hand, took the kids to visit him nearly every weekend. She later reproached me, claiming I embarrassed her by going alone. So, yes, I was well aware of who and what my wife was. Sadly, I still harbored love for her. That love persisted until the moment I stepped into the doctor's office. I knew she was there because her car was in the parking lot. The children were old enough to fend for themselves and be left unattended for a while. His clinic was situated among other professional offices. When I found the door to his office locked, I almost dislocated my shoulder attempting to break it down. After failing to budge the door, I resorted to using a nearby fire extinguisher to repeatedly strike the handle. Within a minute, the door gave way, and I entered. I could hear Camille's sounds from the next room. As I approached, it seemed to me that the clowns and Disney characters decorating the walls were mocking me. Her increasing screams led me to the second room in the corridor, designed to examine sick children. That's where I found her. The doctor, with his huge belly, twisted awkwardly. The sight of my wife cheating on me disgusted and infuriated me. An old doctor? Was that the reason she betrayed me? They were unaware of my presence until I grabbed him and pulled him aside. I threw it on the closet. He stared at me in shock, speechless, while she begged me to leave. I haven't been in any fights since 4th grade. I wasn't a retired Navy SEAL, and I didn't get any boxing advice from Jerry. I punched Dr. Burroughs hard in the stomach, feeling something twist my wrist uncomfortably. With my other hand, I pressed his head against the closet. Why? I couldn't tell. Maybe I should have punched him or grabbed something to hit him with. Despite the woman's incessant cries of, "Get out! You've ruined everything." "That's it!" She started pounding me on the back, probably more effectively with her fists than mine. In desperation, I punched Burroughs in the face and kicked him, realizing my incompetence in combat. He tried to defend himself, which indicated his lack of skill. When I came to, I felt a throbbing pain in my arm and wrist. After looking around the messy room with equipment scattered everywhere, I spat at the doctor before turning to my wife. "You don't have to come home this time. Just stay away from us." I departed and drove to the hospital. I phoned my aunt requesting her to come over and look after the kids until I returned. There were no fractures in my hand or wrist, but the pain was excruciating. They bandaged it for me, prescribed some painkillers and anti-inflammatories, and then sent me home. The police cars were visible from the end of the block. I decelerated and eventually halted, observing them parked outside our residence. I contemplated the idea of turning back, checking into a hotel for the night, consulting a lawyer, and surrendering myself. However, I was too weary to engage in a battle. I simply yearned for closure. Her presence had loomed over our lives for as long as I could recall, draining us mentally and spiritually. I envisaged spending the night behind bars, posting bail, and retrieving my children. We could lodge with my aunt until I devised a more permanent solution. But reality hit differently. As I pulled up, she began to scream and point accusatory fingers. Concealing herself halfway behind the door, she convincingly feigned terror. Her left eye exhibited signs of bruising, likely to turn black and blue by the next day. A heavy weight settled in the pit of my stomach. She was orchestrating a setup. I turned off the ignition, ensuring my hands remained visible at all times, and cautiously stepped out onto the driveway. The police officers conducted themselves professionally. One of them maintained her hand close to her holster while the other approached me slowly as he spoke. "Mr. Anthony Cutto?" "Yes. I'll admit right now that I broke into that jerk's office and gave him a beating. But I never laid a hand on my wife. Am I going to be arrested?" As they handcuffed me, I glanced at my house and saw my aunt guiding my eldest son away from the window. My wife, the contemptible woman, smirked at me while the officer ensured I safely entered the back of the car. My one permitted phone call went to my cousin Mateo. We grew up together and were more like siblings than cousins. He secured the services of the top lawyer in the city for me and arranged my bail. I was prohibited from approaching the woman or my children within 500 feet and couldn't make any contact with them. Thanks to Mateo's lawyer and Dr. Burrows not wanting fathers to find out about his affairs with the mothers of his patients, I only served 60 days and had a lengthy parole. It could have been worse, but the absence of my kids was tearing me apart. Once released, I was granted supervised visits, 1 hour per week, with supervision costs covered by me. Mateo lent me sufficient funds for a down payment on a house, the same one where we had raised our children. My old shop's building still stood, necessitating a sheriff's presence as I retrieved my tools and equipment from the house where my ex-wife and children resided. Like an injured animal, I returned to the place where I once felt secure, where my happiest memories resided. Resuming work, Mateo emerged as my primary client. While I wasn't entirely clear on his profession, it seemed reminiscent of our childhood endeavors. He connected sellers with buyers for a percentage, prioritizing legality as long as innocence remained unharmed. Did I believe it all above board? Not entirely. Mateo had a talent for matchmaking transactions, unconcerned unless harm was involved. He commissioned me for high-end vases, paying exorbitant fees, which he then sold to his clients at inflated prices. On paper, his income now stemmed from selling vases, valued at under $1,000 for tens of thousands of dollars. The divorce was progressing through the legal system, and now she was advocating for unsupervised visitations. I was surprised it took her this long to make that move. Now that she had to take on the responsibility of being a mother, she didn't seem interested. If she could leave the kids with me sometimes, it gave her the chance to go out and do whatever and see whoever she pleased. The previous year, I earned $52,000. It wasn't great, but it covered our living expenses since the cost of living in our area wasn't too high. She didn't have to work. We were just about managing to live comfortably. Her lawyer used this income to demand high alimony and child support payments from me. Mateo, her lawyer, was holding on to my pay or whatever share until I requested it. Taking into account his fees, I was looking at a total income of just over $125,000 that year. I contemplated contesting the percentage she demanded of the $52,000, but I didn't want to put up too much of a fight. After the divorce was finalized, she sent me a lengthy letter. I never opened it, but it felt thick, like there were at least 5 sheets of paper inside. I could imagine its contents. She likely blamed me for everything, claiming I was a failure who should have earned more money. She probably criticized my reaction to Dr. Burrows's thorough medical examination. It was all my fault. I took the letter to my workshop and burned it to ashes with a blowtorch. Weeks passed, and I couldn't get rid of thoughts about this DVD. It was like the incessant Chinese waterboarding that was continuously knocking on the door of my mind. Drip. Did she discuss me with him? Drip. Did he satisfy her better than I did? Drip. Was it really my fault? Drip. Will the DVD tell you why she destroyed our family? Drip. Finally, I inserted it into my laptop, holding the whiskey in my hand. The sight of my wife cheating on me with a doctor. What really shocked me was her words. She confessed that she married me because Jerry, her brother, approved of my choice. He was her financial support, and she wanted him to be happy. She saw her marriage as a sacrifice for him. If she married me to appease him, then why didn't she decide to cheat? It was discouraging, but not entirely unexpected. What really shocked me was that she confessed to the doctor that I was not the biological father of any of our 3 children. Strangely enough, my first reaction was to wonder what kind of crazy woman thinks it's a good conversation in bed to win a new husband. The video was clear enough that I could see him recoil, and a look of disgust flashed across his face. I didn't make it to my next scheduled visit. Not because my feelings for them had changed, but because I had immersed myself in alcohol, drowning my days away. A few weeks later, Mateo showed up at my doorstep. I looked terrible, and so did he. Though if we were judging based on hygiene, he would definitely win. I stared at his newly shaved head and pale complexion for too long before he finally spoke up. Are you going to let me in? Oh, yeah, sorry. I held the screen door open for him and rummaged through the fridge for a beer. I handed him one, grabbed one for myself, reconsidered, and put mine back. So, what brings you here, Mateo? Not much. You haven't been picking up your phone for over 2 weeks. You haven't reached out to anyone. You missed your visit with the kids, and my mom is pretty upset about that, by the way. You owe me 4 vases. You smell like a homeless person, and your place is a disaster. But other than that, everything's cool. I settled onto the couch while Mateo cleared some newspapers from a chair and joined me. Anthony, talk to me. What's going on? After inhaling deeply and exhaling slowly, I began. Damn it, it's about the kids. What's wrong with them? Are they okay? Well, the thing is, they're not my biological children. What are you saying? Who told you that? My awful ex-wife. There's a video from the private investigator. She confessed to the doctor. Seems like she was proud of it. A mixture of anger and sadness played across my cousin's face. After a brief pause, he spoke. That despicable woman. If she were in a dumpster fire, I'd just close the lid and move on. We need to get paternity tests done. And then, damn her. You've been the one raising those kids. You're more of a parent to them than she'll ever be. Pull yourself together, shave, shower, grab something to eat, and then we'll see your lawyer. It's time to fight for full custody. Screw her. Mateo may not have had the largest vocabulary, but he was both my cousin and closest confidant. While I was in the shower, he tidied up the house. As I stepped onto the porch, I saw him moving my Weber kettle to the front and adding charcoal. Hey, you're looking more human now, he said. Here's the plan. We're heading to Pueblo to meet with the lawyer. Then, we'll try to visit your kids. We need to get ahead of this situation with CPS or whoever's handling your custody and visitation. After that, you're flying back to LA with me. Barbara would love to see you. I'll make sure you're back in time for your next official visit. And that's exactly what we did. We consulted with the lawyer, who assured us he'd speak to the necessary authorities to minimize any repercussions from missing the visitation. The ex let us see the kids, probably because it gave her a chance to do what she wanted. She stopped me as I was leaving. Anthony, I require some financial assistance. Find employment. I have to supervise the children, you fool. I paused, counting to 10. Find a part-time job. Be reasonable. It's only money. It's my money, not yours, you greedy person. My money. You've received everything owed to you, the house, and your car, and now you demand more? I know for a fact that Mateo's mother buys things for the kids. You won't receive another penny from me. Mateo called from the driveway. "Anthony, let's go." He was right. Continuing to argue with her was pointless. I turned and walked away, leaving her standing there. This wasn't about her. It was about my children. We took them to a movie and out to dinner. They were thrilled to see Uncle Mateo, and we all went to my aunt's for dessert. Mateo brought 3 pies, 4 gallons of ice cream, and a stack of cash for his mother. I wasn't allowed unsupervised visits, but it wasn't my fault if I happened to be present when they visited their uncle. While en route to Los Angeles, Mateo returned from the restroom, and as he sat down, a small medicine bottle slipped from his pocket. He appeared sweaty, and his hand trembled as he attempted to retrieve it. I reached for the bottle. "Are you all right?" Yeah, just feeling a bit under the weather. Maybe the flu or something. Nothing major." I examined the label. "What's Afinitor?" "Nothing, just a couple a day and I'll be back on my feet in 72 hours. Seriously, it's no big deal. Please don't tell Barb. I don't want her to worry." "Sure. We'll make sure you get plenty of vitamin C. That should help. Maybe some matzo ball soup, too." Seeing his condition, I was relieved to learn it was only the flu. Since there were no signs of coughing or sneezing, it seemed like he was at the tail end of it. I just hoped he wasn't contagious, especially since we had spent the day with my kids. Upon touchdown, we collected our luggage and made our way to the parking lot. The crowd at LAX seemed larger than the population of Pueblo. I silently pleaded with the traffic deities as Mateo skillfully maneuvered his caddy out of the airport. Visiting Mateo and Barbara often meant bracing myself for the notorious congestion of the 405. With his focus on the road, Mateo asked, "Hungry?" "Definitely." "Barb's ordering Thai, so how hungry are you, really?" "If you're wondering whether I can manage some Thai after a stop at In-N-Out, the answer is absolutely." "Ha! You're definitely my cousin. All right, animal style it is." Pulling into his driveway, I took a moment to savor the scenery before unbuckling. His place was a sanctuary of comfort, a beautiful home nestled on a spacious plot of land. Without children, they didn't need much space indoors. The pastel hues of the stucco perfectly complemented the ambiance. They had avocado trees, one in the front and another in the back. During my initial visits, the sound of avocados dropping onto the metal roof of their enclosed porch startled me. It seemed surreal to stroll into the backyard, pluck a lemon from one tree, and gather avocados from another. Within 20 minutes, you could be lounging by the pool with the freshest guacamole imaginable. Barbara greeted us at the entrance. A tall, slender woman, she infused their residence with warmth and hospitality. Although she hailed from California, she exuded the charm of a classic Southern belle. Barbara personified grace and coziness. After embracing Mateo and then me, she whispered softly, "I'm deeply sorry, Anthony. None of this was fair to you." Stepping back, she held my shoulders at arm's length, brushing her blonde hair away from her face to meet my gaze. "Mateo and I missed you. We're glad you're here. Consider this your home, always open to you." Releasing my shoulders, she turned slightly before casting a knowing glance back at me. Addressing her husband, she remarked, "You two stopped at In-N-Out, didn't you?" Mateo chuckled. "Don't blame me. He wouldn't stop crying about it the entire flight. I had to give in eventually." Barbara joined in the laughter as we settled down to eat. During dinner, we caught up, Barbara inquiring about both my new and former residences. Our conversation turned to her mother-in-law, then shifted to the children. Sensing my discomfort, Barbara steered the discussion toward lighter topics: movies, current events, anything neutral enough to maintain the conversation without delving into sadness. I smiled, acknowledging her effort. Mateo had been incredibly fortunate. He had struck gold in marriage, while mine had been a doomed gamble from the beginning. "It's all right, Barb. It stings. But there's no point in avoiding it. Yes, she set me up, and I ended up in jail." Then, She proceeded to take most of our assets, the house, and secure hefty alimony based on my earnings. I resent her for that. But the real devastation came with losing the kids. Honestly, I'm lost. I don't know what to do next. I'm still navigating through this haze. Well, while you and my husband were enjoying yourselves, I took some action. 3 DNA kits will arrive tomorrow before 5 hours. We'll get samples from the kids and finally determine if she was truthful or not. I consulted Mateo's lawyer, and he suggested a family law specialist. Have you considered annulling your marriage? You have a video of her confessing that it was fraudulent from the start and she began cheating immediately. If it's annulled, her alimony disappears. Stunned, I gazed at her. That could actually work? Seriously? That's brilliant. I don't want her to receive a cent. We'll meet the lawyer tomorrow afternoon. It seems like you have a strong chance of getting an annulment. Mateo chimed in. I have to drive down to San Diego tomorrow for work. Speaking of which, I'll need those vases, Anthony. We've set you up in the backyard with the same equipment you have at home. Think of it as your shop away from home. Glancing at him, I noticed his left hand trembling near his plate. He quickly withdrew it to his lap, meeting my gaze with a slight shake of his head. I looked at Barb, then back at him, but remained silent. After some more conversation, we retired to bed. Barb entered the guest room while I unpacked, wordlessly changing pillowcases as I pondered Mateo's demeanor. As she started to leave, I glanced up. Thank you, Barbara. It's been tough. Family means a lot. She hugged me once more, whispering in my ear. I'll say it again. You didn't deserve what she did to you. You're a good man, Anthony. By the time I woke up, Mateo had already left. Frustrated with myself for not talking to him before his departure, I showered and grabbed some muesli and soy milk for breakfast. Barb and my cousin were fully embracing the California stereotypes. I just hoped tofu wasn't on the dinner menu. Mateo had been right. There was a duplicate of all my equipment in a new, spacious shed in their backyard. I worked until around noon when Barbara came in with some lemonade. She was wearing a light blue sundress with a yellow belt, complementing her corn silk hair and blue eyes perfectly. I must have looked like a sweaty mess. She smiled, handing me the lemonade. We need to leave in about 45 minutes. Okay, thanks. I'll wrap things up here and take another shower. We met with the attorney, who emphasized that he was only providing me with general information and that if I wanted to proceed further, I'd need a lawyer in Colorado. He asked numerous questions to which I provided as many answers as possible. He reassured me that my case seemed promising, which brought me some happiness after a long time. Barb attempted to cover the expenses, but I declined, as I had sufficient funds held with Mateo until necessary. I settled the consultation fee, and then we enjoyed a seafood lunch instead of tofu before heading home. Barb noticed my improved mood, and we reminisced for almost 2 hours about old times, chuckling at memories from Mateo and my childhood. He phoned to inform me that he had to extend his stay overnight. After Barb hung up and tried to reach him, I stepped outside by the pool and called him myself. It went to voicemail. I attempted again with the same result. Finally, I sent a text message. Stop messing around and call me back, now. He did. I was in the restroom. Can't a guy take a break? What's bothering you? Okay, sorry. I don't know. I thought you were avoiding me. What? Mateo, what was going on with your arm last night? The shaking? It's nothing. Remember when I broke my arm? There was some minor nerve damage, and now that I'm getting older, it bothers me a bit when I'm tired. Listen, I appreciate your concern, cousin, but really, it's nothing. That's all? That's all. Quit worrying about me and focus on making those vases. Barb and I changed into swimsuits and headed out to the pool. She chuckled when I jumped as an avocado hit the sheet metal. Feeling embarrassed, I smiled at her, feeling a bit self-conscious. We enjoyed some white wine and the warm water until we started to wrinkle. Mateo was back the next morning, and I spent the day in the shed, working on his vases. He had an account set up for me where he was holding most of the money he was paying so the other person wouldn't be able to access it. There was about $17,000 in there, and I had him get me $5,000 in cash. When I wasn't working, the three of us ate, swam, laughed, and talked. The following day followed a similar pattern, and the day after that I headed for my scheduled visit with the kids. I met them at their mother's house, and we spent our time together at my former workshop. I had used a portion of the money from Mateo to buy gifts. While my children would have been content to see me without presents, being kids, they couldn't contain their excitement when they received them. The newest iPhones were particularly popular, and my oldest child exclaimed something that sounded like, "Yeet!" I wasn't sure of its meaning, but I assumed it was positive. The social worker informed me that this week marked the end of supervised visits, and my visitation time was extended to 4 hours every Saturday. There would be a review in 60 days, with the possibility of further extensions. Despite maintaining her professional demeanor, the social worker was kind. I always brought lunch for the kids and included something for her as well. Initially, she declined, but over time she seemed to warm up to me, despite my difficult ex-wife. The social worker observed me closely as I informed the children that I had purchased Ancestry.com, http Ancestry.com, memberships for all of us. They didn't question me as I collected swabs of their DNA. Her expression turned into a frown when I finished, and she halted me as I reached the door of the shop. "Is there anything I should be worried about, Mr. Cuddo?" she asked. "I don't believe so." "Why would you be concerned?" "The children had a wonderful time. I certainly did." "Did you notice something I missed?" I replied. "Mr. Cuddo, wouldn't one DNA sample be enough?" "You had all 3 children provide swabs," she pointed out. "You know how children can be. If one of them gets something, they all want it. I see them once a week." "I wanted to avoid any potential jealousy," I explained. "I see. Well, you have my card. Please contact me if you feel there's anything we should discuss," she said. "Will do. Have a great week," I responded. As I made my way to my car, the woman hurried down the steps from the house. "Anthony, please wait," she called out as I got into the car, holding the door open. "Listen, I need some money. The kids require clothes, and there's an issue with the boiler. The boiler is still under warranty. Call the company to fix it. I have the kids for 4 hours next week. I'll take them shopping," I replied. "Anthony, darling, can't you just help me out? Look, I'm not your husband anymore, and I'm certainly not your friend. If you need money, get a job. If you want someone to give you things, find someone else. I have to leave." "Remove your hands from my car," I insisted. "What about your children, you selfish jerk?" she retorted. I sat there, seething. Raising my gaze from the steering wheel, I glared at her. "My what? Did you just call them my kids?" Her face betrayed a glimpse of terror. I recognized it immediately. It wasn't the fear of discovery, nor the dread of humiliation. It was the apprehension of losing child support. Releasing her grip on the car door, she stepped back. I shut it firmly and drove away. As I sat at the airport awaiting my flight back to Los Angeles, I dialed my neighbor, Jennifer Cruz. "Hey, Jennifer, it's Anthony." "Hello there, stranger. How have you been?" "Doing well, thanks. Listen, I'll be in LA for a bit. Could you do me a favor and collect the mail and keep an eye on the house?" "Of course. By the way, can you make those little glass ornaments that scatter light when placed in windows?" "Yeah, I can make those. Why do you ask?" "Well, I heard Councilwoman Cumberly is interested in having hundreds made for Christmas to gift to her major donors. I thought you could provide her with your information and get your foot in the door." "Jennifer, how do you always manage to find these opportunities?" "Oh, you know, I keep my ear to the ground." "All right, thanks for the heads up and for watching the place. I'll be back sometime next week." Mrs. Cruz was incredibly caring, but she possessed an uncanny ability to delve into everyone's affairs. Barb hosted a dinner for me, and Mateo gave me a ride. Weekend traffic was surprisingly manageable, allowing us to enjoy the journey. As Mateo changed lanes, he brought up a request. "Hey, I need a favor." "Of course. What is it?" "I have to attend a meeting for a deal tomorrow evening, but Barbara has a charity event. I just found out about the meeting today and can't get out of it. Can you accompany her?" "Yeah, sure, I suppose." "Is it formal?" "Yes. You can borrow my tuxedo." "A tuxedo? Really? That doesn't sound like my scene." "You'll manage. Just stick with Barb and let her handle the conversation." "All right, sure." That evening, we shared a pleasant dinner, played cards, and then retired to bed. The next day, I resumed work on the vases until 2 p.m., then took a break to shower and shave. Mateo's tuxedo fit me perfectly, as if it had been custom-made. As I emerged from my room, my cousin gave a whistle of approval, earning a playful smack from Barbara. "You look great, Anthony. Ready to go?" she asked, looking stunning in a red dress that hugged her slender figure. I couldn't help but admire her, feeling a pang of guilt for not having been with a woman in a long time. Mateo teased me about my mission to fend off single guys at the event, jokingly suggesting I bring a club. Embarrassed, I complimented Barbara, who blushed and kissed her husband before we departed. During the 45-minute journey, I couldn't shake the feeling of guilt as I admired Barbara's beauty. Arriving at the upscale event, I was relieved I hadn't worn one of my usual suits. I couldn't help but notice the admiring glances Barbara received as we entered and took our seats. Inside, conflicting emotions of jealousy, pride, and shame churned within me. After introducing ourselves to our table mates and ordering dinner, we hoped for something better than the typical rubber chicken. Then we made our way to the dance floor. After dancing to Janelle Monáe's Make Me Feel and 2 slow songs, I had to create some distance between us to conceal my intense feelings. Once again, I felt foolish. We participated in a few silent auctions benefiting pit bull rescues, and then she reached for my hand. "Anthony, let's have a chat." She guided me to an unoccupied table towards the back of the room. As we settled down, she glanced around, seemingly gathering her thoughts. "You're his closest friend. He cherishes you like a brother. Have you noticed anything off about Mateo?" What could I possibly respond? I felt as though divulging anything would betray an implicit confidence. I suppose she detected my hesitation. "I understand the bond you share, and you might be reluctant to disclose anything you believe he wouldn't want me to know. But if there's something he's keeping from me, I need to be aware. Anthony, a few weeks ago, I discovered him dozing by the pool. He was so badly sunburned that he required medical attention. He slept for over 18 hours that day. When your equipment was delivered, he was conversing with the delivery men when he suddenly began slurring his words. He brushed it off as fatigue, but I could sense it was more serious. I'm absolutely terrified." I was at a loss for words. I sat back in my chair, stunned. "Barb, why would he keep something like this from us?" I recalled when we returned here, he seemed sweaty and pale. I noticed his trembling hands, and a medicine bottle slipped from his pocket. He claimed it was for the flu. Then, at dinner, he hid his shaking hand under the table. He blamed it on nerve damage from a past arm injury. "Did you check the label on the bottle? Do you know what medicine it was or who prescribed it?" No. I think it was something like Abitov? I'm not sure. What should we do? Should we confront him?" Barb held back tears as she replied, "Let me investigate first." She squeezed my hand. "Thank you, Anthony. Would you mind if we skipped dinner?" "Can we swing by In-N-Out on the way home?" I joked, but there was an unsettling ease when I referred to it as home. It wasn't my home, it was theirs. Mine was in Colorado. She hugged me, and we left. Carrying bags from In-N-Out, we found Mateo exactly where we'd left him, asleep on the couch. Had he missed his meeting? Barb approached him, taking his hand in hers. gently stroking it. "Honey? Mateo?" He blinked slowly, looking at us both with a smile. "Back already? Did you bring me some burgers and fries?" An unpleasant feeling of sorrow settled in my stomach, its source unclear. It was a sense of foreboding that rendered me momentarily speechless. "Sure thing. I'll change out of your tux. Wouldn't want to incur cleaning costs for grease and ketchup stains." Barb appeared puzzled. "What?" "Anthony, that's your tuxedo. Mateo bought it for you last week." Glancing between Barb and my cousin, I suppressed the myriad questions flooding my mind. "Oh, all right then. Let me go switch into something else." He had known for a week that I would require a tuxedo for tonight. This wasn't a sudden meeting, if indeed there was a meeting. After changing, we savored the food by the poolside. "So, Maddie, what happened tonight?" "They called about half an hour after you left. The meeting got canceled." "That's disappointing. I hope it didn't cost you a deal." "Nah, it's all good." Barbara gathered some wrappers in the bag, then headed into the kitchen. From behind Mateo, I caught sight of her grabbing his phone from the counter. She swiped a few times and glanced at me, shaking her head. I persisted. "So, they just called out of nowhere and canceled. Is that a common occurrence? Sometimes my line of work isn't exactly stable, you know." Life carried on, and Mateo appeared weary but otherwise unaffected. I completed his vases and began working on some designs to present to the councilwoman. I flew out on Friday night. Spending time with my children, just the four of us, felt wonderful. As pleasant as the social services woman was, her presence weighed heavily on my emotions like an anchor. I took them go-kart racing and then out to dinner before returning them home. When the woman emerged from the house and began walking toward me, I quickly reversed the car and left. I happily sang along to the radio during the 2-hour drive back, feeling upbeat. I was eager to acquire more clients, and Jennifer's referral could be immensely beneficial. Waiting for the DNA test results, scheduled for Monday, was crucial. I also needed to address the annulment issue and had an appointment on Monday morning with the same attorney who handled my divorce. Plus, I felt an urgent need to find a partner before facing another embarrassing situation with Barbara. On Sunday, I dedicated my time to creating samples for the councilwoman and preparing extra items as a token of appreciation for Jennifer. She dropped by in the early evening to deliver my mail, and we sat on the porch chatting. In a soft yet firm tone, she addressed 2 approaching children with a wagon. "Be kind." The older child, a preteen boy, and the younger, a 10-year-old girl, were of different ethnicities. The boy, who wore a perpetual smile, introduced himself as Ted. He explained that they lived nearby and offered to sell vegetables they had grown themselves with their father and younger sister Wendy, who didn't contribute much due to her age. I glanced at Jennifer, who gave me a look that clearly conveyed, "Don't mess this up." All right, Ted. What do you have?" "We've got cucumbers, tomatoes, basil, and peaches. And here's the kicker. If you spend $5, you get free recipes for whatever you buy." It had been a successful weekend. Jennifer trusted these youngsters, sensing their sincerity. "All right, I'll take 10 bargualar worth. And you, Jennifer, need anything?" "Well, Anthony, I'll also take 10 bargualars worth." Ted selected various items, packing them into cardboard boxes, while Wendy proudly demonstrated an app on her phone, boasting recipes, images, and coupons for local grocery stores. After paying them, they left content. I split my purchases with Jennifer and made a salad for dinner that night. My morning meeting with the lawyer went smoothly, and she agreed with the other attorney that we had a strong chance of obtaining the annulment. The DNA test results arrived as expected via UPS, confirming that I was the father of all 3 of my children. I couldn't comprehend what the woman was insinuating. Had she been involved with so many other men that she doubted my paternity? Initially, I was overjoyed. It was the happiest I had felt in years. But then, everything changed. Barbara called me that evening, her voice trembling with tears. Anthony, Anthony, you need to come home, she said. Oh my God, Anthony. He has a brain tumor. I rushed back to Pueblo, catching a direct flight within 3 hours. I didn't bother to pack. I may not have even locked the door. Numbness consumed me, and my thoughts scattered from memories of our childhood to his support after my discovery about the other woman. Did his mother suspect? I almost phoned her to ask for help with the children, risking accidentally revealing her son's condition. In the airplane lavatory, I broke down in tears, only regaining composure when someone knocked on the door. After splashing water on my face, I pulled myself together and returned to my seat. Feeling foolish, I stopped searching for Mateo at the baggage claim. Hertz gladly accepted my money and I rented a midsize car. 90 minutes after leaving the airport, I arrived at their house. Why was I now thinking of it as their place? What happened to it being home? Sitting in the car in their driveway, I questioned if I was strong enough for this. Forget cousins, he was my brother. No child of my parents could possibly be closer than Mateo. I got out and went to the door. Barbara looked both awful and beautiful as she answered my knock. She pulled me into a hug, crying on my chest. Mateo was sitting on the couch. Hey, I'm still alive, folks. Can we stop with the tears for a while? I must have been cried out because I just sat in a chair and watched him for a while. Eventually, he turned to me, annoyed. Would you stop that? You're freaking me out. I kept watching him. How long have you known? A while. A long time. I closed my eyes for a moment. Did you know before I found out about the shit? Yeah. I'm not going to apologize for that. Mateo, why didn't you say something? You were there for me when I needed you, and you took away my chance to be there for you. If things go bad, I'm going to have to live with that. Okay, I see where you're coming from. But the difference is that I could do something for you. No one can do anything for me. I had been mistaken. I wasn't all cried out. It felt like a giant had kicked me in the stomach. With a catch in my voice, I asked the question I dreaded. How long? Probably less than 90 days. 90 days. Less than 3 months left with a man I would take a bullet for. What can I do? Do you want me to talk to your mom? He smiled sadly. No. Barb and I are flying back next week with you for your visitation. We'll talk to her when you're with the kids. By the way, have you heard anything about the kids? Despite my pain, I smiled. Yeah, they're mine. All of them. That's amazing, Aunt. Really, fantastic. We'd all love them the same, but really just great. Maddie, let me do something. What can I do? This is really selfish, but what the hell, right? I might as well push all my chips to the center. If you could spend as much time with us as you can outside of time with the kids, it would mean a lot. I'm a little scared, Aunt. And it was always you and me against the world, you know. It seemed that I wasn't all cried out after all. I'm not going anywhere. Maybe I can offer the money to take the kids to the airport so they could visit their aunt and uncle for a couple of weekends. His tumor was inoperable. We spent his last few months trying to make him as happy and comfortable as possible. He showed me where his money was so I could get it to Barbara once he was gone. Not in a figurative way, by giving me access to hidden accounts. He literally showed me his money. He had buried bar after bar of gold on property he owned outside of Ontario near the desert. My ex-wife called a few weeks after I heard about Mateo's tumor. The conversation felt surreal, as if I were talking to a completely different person. Anthony, please don't hang up on me. I'm not asking for money, I just need some information. At least she was trying a new approach. Okay. What do you need to know? I need to learn about skateboarding. I need to get closer to our kids, and it's all Jimmy talks about. I was at a loss for words. Was she trying to manipulate me? Why would you care? Listen, I'm trying, okay? I know the kids always preferred you, but I thought I had some place in their hearts. Dad was always number one, but I hoped I was at least a solid number two. Please, no jokes, I was wrong. They don't know me or love me or even care that they don't love me. I'm not blaming them or you. This isn't easy, okay? I know I wasn't everything I could have been, but I want to be better. Can you help me? Anthony, are you still there? Yeah, sorry. I was just lost in thought for a second. Listen, let me think about this and call you back tomorrow. All right, Anthony, thank you. Okay, I'm glad you called, Camilla. The whole thing was just bizarre. I gathered some basic information on the kids' interests, including YouTube links, local stores for skateboarding, camping, comic books, and some Amazon links to guides on each activity. We spoke civilly the next day, and I emailed her the information. 2 weeks later, Aunt Sylvie moved in. I insisted she take the guest room, and I put a futon in the shop out back for myself. I worked half days. Jennifer continued taking care of the house for me and mailed care packages for Mateo. She had known us since we were boys and she was in high school. Remembering his love for chili verde, she sent some every week. It arrived in triple-sealed Tupperware with same-day delivery. I don't know how much that cost her, but even when Mateo barely touched other food, he devoured every bit of what she sent. I was back in Pueblo and spoke to my lawyer. It turned out that being married for nearly 2 decades and having fathered her 3 children made an annulment almost impossible. If I hadn't been their father, it would be a different story. I was okay with it. Paying her some alimony for 3 years was worth it if it meant the children were mine. The kids and I were about to leave for LA when Camilla stopped me at the door. Kids, wait in the car. Your dad'll be right out. Despite their feelings about her, they obeyed. She turned to me, looking down, silent. Camilla, I need to go. She raised her hand as if to touch me, then hesitated and lowered it. You know I'm not a great cook, but hold on. She grabbed a sizable box and handed it to me. Remember when we were kids, there were 7 or 8 of us? We'd pool our money and go to Sweeney's to buy a couple of peanut butter silk pies and some Cokes. Mateo loved those. This one might not be great, but give it to him anyway. Tell him I tried, okay? I had forgotten about that. I had forgotten a lot about Camilla. I think I had to survive. She was right. He loved those pies. I'm sure he'll love it. That was thoughtful of you. Anthony, I'm sorry. For everything. Okay. I appreciate you saying that. Have a safe flight. What just happened? Who was this person? Mateo loved seeing the kids and even had some of the pie. It wasn't bad. He struggled to believe her actions didn't have an ulterior motive, but he wasn't going to look a gift pie in the mouth. Gently questioning the kids revealed that she did seem to be making an effort. Their feelings towards her were thawing, which I suppose was a good thing. He asked me to accompany Barb to another charity event, a circus for terminally ill children. Barbara was on the board of directors, and he insisted she attend. Aunt, she needs to get out. Try to make her smile. Just for a few hours. I didn't have to wear a tuxedo this time. We had fun and even managed to laugh. Every time that happened, I felt guilty thinking about Mateo at home and the less fortunate kids around us. The event took place at an animal reserve and was crowded. Everyone seemed to know and adore Barbara, especially most of the single men. She talked to everyone who approached her again, mostly single men. That bothered me more than it should have. Mateo began to develop a need for home improvement tools. I wasn't sure what repairs he planned to do since he spent most of his time in bed, but he would send Barbara to pick up what he wanted and asked me to go along to carry it for her. We were wandering down an aisle in Lowe's when she asked, without turning towards me, "Does he think he's being subtle?" I laughed. I certainly hope not. How much do you want to bet he'll say we got the wrong stuff and suggest we go to Home Depot? Maybe he'll even insist we have lunch while we're out. She laughed back, and we found our items and headed out. We were driving home when she addressed the elephant in the room. "Anthony, you know I care about you, right? But this, I know. He's a good man. Mateo's trying his best to do what's right until the end. Let's make him happy and continue with his little missions. When it's all over, I'll go back to Colorado." She was silent for a moment before softly and sadly saying, "Okay." He passed away 3 weeks later. I stayed for a week to help Barbara. If I hadn't, I would have been overwhelmed by grief. Aunt Sylvie stayed for an additional week before returning home. We all promised to meet up regularly, but it didn't work out that way. 6 months to the day after his death, I received a package in the mail. Inside, there was an itinerary, a ticket for a 2-week cruise, and a DVD. I assumed the video contained information about the cruise ship and details about the various ports of call. It certainly couldn't be worse than the last DVD I had received. I put the DVD into my laptop, and there was my cousin, my brother, looking frail and lying in his bed. "Hello, Anthony. Mom is helping me make this. Say hi, Mom." The camera angle shifted to show Aunt Sylvie waving. It then focused back on her son. "I'm going to tell you 2 things with certainty, and then I'm going to ask for a favor. First, you're an idiot. Second, Barbara loves you. She always has, but as a brother. During these last few months, that has changed. I know her better than anyone. She's in love with you, and I know you better than anyone. You love her. Listen to me carefully, Anthony. I want this to happen. I can't be more clear. I know you'll feel it's a betrayal of some sort for the 2 of you to be together. But I'm going to repeat myself. It's what I want. I love you, Mom, and Barbara more than anyone else on this planet. Please do this for me. If you doubt my sincerity, call Mom and talk to her. Anthony, if you loved me, if you respected me, be on that cruise. She needs you, and you need her. I love you, man. I'll see you again someday." It was a stunning room, with a spacious balcony, and it must have cost him a fortune. I was alone, but that was fine. I couldn't expect her to feel the same way I did. She was wealthy, beautiful, and sophisticated. I was comfortable, average-looking, and from a rural area. But it was all right. Really, it was. I was determined to enjoy the cruise and toast to Mateo at every port. I wore the tuxedo he had bought me for the first dinner on board. It was slightly disappointing. From the movies I had seen, I expected everyone to be dressed to the nines. I sat down and introduced myself to the others at the table. We were chatting when the men and a few women looked past me, staring over my shoulder. "Is this where I'm supposed to be?" I turned and stood up. She was wearing the same red dress from the charity auction. She was the most beautiful woman there, maybe the most beautiful anywhere. Smiling, I pulled back her chair. I swallowed hard before replying, "Yes, I believe so.